Okay, so welcome everybody to the Women of AR debriefing of the USARA National Championships. Let me apologize for the video quality on mine. I ended up with an unexpected trip, so I am coming to you from my car. I do have 5G here and I'm sitting in a parking lot, so shouldn't have any connection issues, but apologies for any little technical difficulties, and thanks to Nikki for being the co-host and working out some of those for us. So let me say that we've got the people that I invited on to sort of be our panelists, if you will, are from the top 1 and 2 teams in the mixed gender and all female categories at nationals. And so that is Mary Chandler, we have with us from the winning overall team. Wadali. Rachel Furman is going to be joining us from the second place mixed gender team, High Point. And then we've got from the winners of the all women division, the Women of AR team, we've got Britt, Karen, and Nikki. And then from the second place team in the all women's division, which was pretty reckless, we've got Ashley here, and I don't think Alyssa is on. And Ashley has Kit's proxy vote. So hopefully Kit will be able to join us after she's finished teaching if she's got time. So thank you to all of you for making the time and being here. We really appreciate it. These debriefs are a great learning opportunity for everybody. And so I want to start by asking, let's start, Mary Chandler, with you. I want to talk about the first question in terms of, big picture for Wadali. You all had heard, I think, that we expected, quite a few teams to clear the course. So Wadali being returning champions, you all certainly were gunning for the win and expected that you would be included among those to clear the course. But there was a little bit of a twist this year in terms of timing with that cutoff, right? And the cutoff, I'm sure anyone who has read about nationals knows that there was a cutoff that caught a lot of teams unexpectedly, and teams that we wouldn't have thought were going to get caught up in that net. And I'll tell people who haven't read through the course instructions or rules, don't know about it. Basically, there was a 4 p.m. cutoff. Teams had, the first leg was a trekking leg, which was a pretty big trek. That took them to their boats where they then paddled. And halfway through the paddle, about 8 miles or so into the paddle, was this 4 p.m. cutoff. So they had this first trek that was a total of about 13 miles to clear. The race started at 9 a.m. They had to get through that trek, transition to boats, and then paddle about 8 miles. And they had to be there at 4 p.m. if they were going to be allowed to continue on down the river on the second half of the paddle to the next TA, and then trek back to that midway point. So that 4 p.m. cutoff caught a lot of people. Mary, for your team, was the cutoff, did you all even have to think about factoring that in? You all had a nav error very early on in that trekking leg. Did you all at any point get nervous about the cutoff after that nav error, or how did that look for your team?
But yeah, we weren't worried about it until we lost an hour stumbling around for the third checkpoint, and even then I didn't really think about it until we were paddling and noticed what time it was, and we're like, oh, this could be a problem for even us. And there's a lot of teams that we caught on that trek when we made up for our mistake, and we were worried about everybody behind us. So, yeah, it didn't seem like it was that tough of a cutoff until after we made it. Because normally we were worried about faced with our strategy kind of changed a little bit, just to the fact that it wasn't until, like I said, it wasn't until we were in the boat when we were like, oh, this could not be good. But and Biz was cramping and we were having other issues trying to get down the river. So once we knew we were going to make it, we weren't too worried. But yeah, for a brief moment, there was definitely some a slight worry there.
Yeah, so that I know well what the nav error was on that first trekking leg for you all. Certainly uncharacteristic for your team to have a nav error of that size, but I didn't realize you all estimated you lost a full hour on that.
I don't know
I
if
think
Mary's
we,
connection is good. I'm not sure if she heard you.
My
yeah,
audio, yeah, my audio keeps dropping. Can you guys
yeah,
hear me?
that's okay. That's okay. Yeah. I didn't remember that nav error that you all had on that first leg cost you a full hour. That's a pretty significant, pretty uncharacteristic, and probably explains why Biz's legs were cramping on the boat. Yeah, I
Yeah, and the
imagine
lack of
you all.
water. I mean, I think that whole opening kind of threw everybody off there.
Yeah. So let me go to the Women of AR team. So I imagine you all probably were anticipating out of the gate that you would be gunning to clear the course. What was your strategy in terms of that first leg? Like timing wise, what were you thinking? Here's how much time we've got to clear this first leg. How much time were you giving yourselves for the paddle? I mean, you all ended up cutting it close, and you were one of those teams that was allowed to come through because you reached the sort of the main pool where that TA was. So what was your thought process through that trekking leg and planning for the trekking leg?
Yeah, I think we started out definitely planning to clear it. That was our kind of read on the course overall. We thought it might be clearable. We had some strategies. I think what we've done pretty well throughout the season is planning when and which points to drop. And so we had some contingencies for later in the race, but it's so hard to make a decision to drop a point in the very first leg of nationals. So we thought it was clearable, and we had a time in mind for when we needed to finish that trek and get on the water. Um, and as we were kind of coming towards the last couple of checkpoints, which were kind of along this gravel road heading into TA, we were realizing like we are behind our time and we are going to be so tight for this paddle cutoff. And we almost dropped the last checkpoint. We thought about it. We said, we're going to drop that checkpoint. And then as we were running up the gravel road, we were like, oh, it's right there though. Let's just go get it. So we got
Oh,
it.
tempting.
And in hindsight, maybe not the right decision. So to your point, yes, we did make that paddle cut off by the skin of our teeth. And maybe a wiser decision would have been to cut that last point, but I think like many teams, we got caught off guard by how hard that cutoff was going to be to make. And I think another thing that really affected us, and probably affected a lot of teams, Mary talked about it a little bit, is I think that first trek took everyone a lot longer than they expected, and there was no water out there whatsoever. So I ran out of water probably 2 hours before we got to TA. Karen and Britt started sharing, but then the entire team was out of water with about 90 minutes left. So by the time we got to the TA to get on the paddle, I can tell, I mean, I was in really rough shape, hydration wise. I think everybody else was. And the problem was we had no opportunity to like recover at all. It was get in the boat and paddle as hard as you can. Because we were trying to make that cutoff. So it was hard because, it was hot. We ran out of water. And yeah, I think that took everyone a lot longer than anticipated.
Yeah. So Ashley, let me have you weigh in here. Pretty Reckless is the team that won nationals 2 years ago and was our first Women of AR race team. And so I know you all had to be coming in here, hoping to gunning for first place in the all women's division. What was your all strategy with that first trekking leg? Were you all thinking you would be able to clear it? Were you pretty confident you would need to drop? How did that look?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, we planned to clear it, but we had a pretty like tight system with Alyssa pace counting and me keeping track of our timing. And so we had made an alt route knowing actually that exact checkpoint that Nikki's talking about on that gravel road, that if we needed to drop something or if timing was getting close, we had kind of worked backwards with where we needed to be. And so we planned on clearing it. We got out there. It was hot. It slowed everyone down. We were fortunate to find water in probably the only spot on that entire trek. So that probably was like pretty huge considering so many folks ran out of water. But we knew that timing was going to be tight once we got out there and realized how slow things were. And so we ultimately decided to ended up dropping 2 points to give us enough buffer, knowing that we didn't want our race to be over because we didn't make that paddle cutoff. And as we were out there and we were, at one point we were like right behind Wadali and we were like, this is taking a lot of people a lot longer. And so I think we came to terms with that pretty quick, and it was not ideal to drop points right off, but we knew it would feel worse to come to that paddle cutoff and not make it. So I think ultimately it was a great choice. Like our timing was spot on. Like we landed exactly where we wanted to be. So I think ultimately it was like definitely the right choice.
Yeah, and so what do you think, was it primarily just the heat slowing you all down? Did you all have any like other significant issues in that first trekking leg, or do you think it was mostly heat? Was it vegetation unexpectedly thick, or what do you
Yeah,
think it was?
that's a good question. I think hot for sure. It was just really, really hot. And we at one point made a choice to cut through and do a little bushwhack where you could have ran on the trail. And I think in the moment we thought this will be out of the sun. It will be, because we had been in like the sun on some of the trails. We were like, we'll be in the shade. We were really fast bushwhacking. Like I would say that as a team, we're faster bushwhacking than trail running. And so we were like, maybe this will play to our advantage. I think it was not. In fact, it didn't take us any less time than it would have. And I think, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. Okay. And I see Rachel Furman's joined us now. So Rachel, your team had, well, I think being local, primarily local, probably, you were pegged to be in among the top finishers, and you're a fast, strong team anyway. I wonder what your plan was out of the gate after looking at the maps. Did you all think you were going to be able to clear the course? What was your strategy for that first leg around that cutoff?
Rachel put in the chat that her
Um,
audio isn't working, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. No worries, Rachel. We'll circle back around to you. So does anybody else want to comment on challenges in that first leg? Because everybody was taking longer on that first leg than we expected. You know, we know some teams had navigation issues. Um, the heat, the water was obviously an issue. Did anybody find that the vegetation was just so much thicker than you had contemplated? Did that become an issue for anybody? No, not really. I'm seeing negative head shakes. Okay, I was just curious. Garrison had talked about when he went out to vet that leg of the course, he felt like the vegetation was a lot thicker than what I had described when we were there in April. And so, you know, I just wondered, you know, what your all's impression was of vegetation wise. Okay. All right. So let's talk next about the paddle leg. So here's another place where I was a little bit surprised. I knew that teams, I will say everything was sharp. Okay. So I knew that teams would have trouble at Woka at the Whitewater Park, which was at the end of the paddle. Because, you know, those were fairly big rapids down there. I was a little surprised that so many teams were flipping at Siloam Springs Kayak Park, which was the midway point where that cutoff was imposed. And, you know, I could see once teams started coming through there, it's just because you all, with 3 people in those boats and the big heavy boats, you were just so much heavier that even teams that didn't flip were getting, you know, swamped and submerged. And so you really weren't able to paddle through it. Even if you stayed upright, you couldn't get all the way through. So I only saw during the time I was there at Siloam Springs, I only saw one team get out and scout those rapids. It was the very first team to come into that TA. They got out and scouted the rapids and said, oh, we'll just portage. And they took their boats and they portaged to the other end. They punched and they went about their merry way with all their dry gear. Did anyone else on this whole call get out and scout those rapids, or did everybody just say, those of you up against the cutoff, I'm sure you just didn't even have time. Even if you had wanted to, you were thinking we don't have time.
No,
Was
we were
that
just
it?
cannonball running that thing, like get through it, just get to it as quickly as possible, and then who cares what happens. And as soon as we hit the first one, our boat went a little sideways and we swam through everything. But
Yeah. Anybody else? Did anybody else even think about scouting the rapids, or did anyone, whether you're on our panel or just calling in, did anyone else here scout the rapids at all? I'm just wondering if anybody did that I didn't see.
Hey, my audio is working now. Sorry, I had to get on my brand new laptop, which meant I had to like do all this stuff.
Yeah, no
We
worries.
scouted them from above the night before.
Ah,
So we looked at it, you know, on the satellite and decided that that looked like there was no way to make it through, and so it was going to be faster to go around. We just like
And
made
so,
that ahead of time.
so did you all portage at Siloam Springs Kayak Park?
At Siloam Springs, we did not portage. We attempted the first. I thought you were talking about Woka, sorry.
Oh,
But
no, that's okay.
the Siloam Springs, we just hit the rapid and almost made it. The first one.
Yeah, lots of people were so close. Some people made it through the rapids and then they got to the pool, and I think you kind of relax and you sort of lose your focus, and then they flipped. So, but you all had scouted Woka. You had looked up Woka online and realized, yeah, no, we're not even going to try for that.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, that was smart.
I
That's
understood what
okay.
you
And
were
then,
talking about. The Siloam Springs one actually didn't look that bad from above, so we were like, oh, we should be able to try that. But yeah, it wasn't. You just loaded down. You got 3 people, aluminum canoe. It's hard.
yeah, it's a lot of weight. I think there were like maybe 2 teams that made it through without even swamping, like were just able to paddle through it. But yeah, out of 75 teams, that's a pretty low percentage that managed to make it through. And so one of the caveats for um and I wonder if this played a role in anyone's decision not to portage. So teams who went through Siloam Springs, paddled through Siloam Springs and flipped, and then they got to Woka and did not portage. So Rachel's saying, yeah, we knew we were going to portage Woka the last rapid regardless. I imagine after flipping at Siloam Springs, that further reinforced that as a good decision. Now, you knew that you weren't going to be in the running for the special paddle award, but it sounds like you were more interested in sort of overall how you're going to do in the race, and you said, we don't care about the special paddle award.
I would
Yeah.
say we cared.
We didn't care.
You
Yeah,
didn't care.
Rachel's team didn't care. So Ashley, talk about then how that factored into your all's decision, because you all swam at Siloam Springs, is that right?
No, we did take on a lot of water, so we did have to dump our boat in between the 2 rapids there, but we did make it. And I will say that I was feeling pretty great about it because I looked up to see Mary Chandler standing in the middle of the stream with their shit like everywhere, and I was like, okay, I was like, we're doing okay, we're doing okay. And so we did like have to dump out a bunch of water, but then we made it through. And then we, something that I really appreciate about adventure racing is just how much like planning goes into making it an experience, including some of the special effects. And so like we had looked at videos online of boats going through Woka. We saw that they were all rafts. So we knew that it was probably a pretty low chance that these boats were, even with just one person in it, like guiding it pretty expertly, had a chance of making it through. But we really wanted to try. And so for a minute, we were paddling next to Burf Barf and they're like, we're getting out. And we were like, you should do it. And then we're like, okay, we're doing it. And then we were just like beyond the point of return. And so we made it through the first 2. But then our boat just had so much water, we just sunk. Like we just sunk, and there's actually some pretty like epic photos of us paddling underwater. Like Alyssa was yelling at us to keep paddling. And I think for us, like that was actually really a highlight because we had been the most nervous about the paddle because it was only our second time as a team paddling together with Alyssa at the stern. And so I think had our boat not gotten stuck in the middle of Boca in a hydraulic, we were in contention for being like we paddled very, very fast. We did make Garrison double check the timing on the paddle award because we felt like we were so fast, but we did miss it by a few minutes. But so it made it
Good
made
for
it
you.
yeah, it made a difference to us.
Yeah, good for you. And you know, one of the volunteers who was at Woka, I never even got a chance to get to Woka during the race, but one of the volunteers who was down there from Visit Bentonville showed me a video of a team, and I couldn't tell who it was because, you know, it's kind of at a distance and a little grainy enough. But we were laughing doing that like Mystery Science Theater 2000 or whatever voiceover for the people in the boat. And I wonder if it was you all. because it was this exact scenario where the team is just going down, 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 and they're still paddling, they're paddling, the water is up to their shoulders, they're still paddling. And I wonder if that was you guys, because I was just like, man, that's persistence right there. It's like, we're just going to keep going until we can't. So good for you all. Mary, what about, so did you all try to paddle Woka after flipping at Siloam Springs? Did you go for Woka or did you go for Broca?
We just filled the boat with water and sank like everyone else. No, it was kind of a no-brainer. It was like we could lose 10 minutes trying to unbury our boat after every other rapid, or we could see the U-Hauls, and we're just like, this is way faster to let's just huff it. And so we did. We didn't even look at the rapids. We just as soon as we could see how close it was, it just made more sense. And those canoes are not designed for that. It would have been fun to go back with the pack raft, but I've done whitewater and canoes in 3 in a boat, and that kind of the big, when you're just going to fill with water, it was pointless. So we just just got up.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for the overall win, it didn't make any sense to, the special paddle award was not what you wanted to go for this time.
It was way too risky to lose more time. It wasn't the act of having to swim. It was just the fact of trying to, empty a bathtub maybe every other rapid. So it just wasn't worth it.
Yeah, the amount of time versus the portage. Did anybody who's on here leave a person at the top of Woka and take the canoe down with 2? Because I heard some people talking about that, and that was actually my husband Ben said that was his strategy before he heard other people doing it. Someone did it successfully. So basically you drop one person out of the boat at the top of the rapids, and then 2 people take the boat down. That person takes the gear, and then 2 people paddle the boat through to the takeout. I thought that was a pretty clever strategic decision.
That's interesting, because that wouldn't occur to me. I would feel like that'd be a big rule problem of separating your team, but I don't know.
I guess as long as the third person is sort of tracking along with the boat to the bottom, then you're within proximity, right?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that was a clever strategic move. I didn't consider that. Like, I felt like that was within the way the rule was written, because I think the way the rule was written said something about you have to paddle the boat through or something like that. You can't portage is how it was written. You can't portage the rapid. So to me, that means the boat's got to go through. But as long as your third person is within proximity of the 2 paddling, I thought that was a pretty clever strategic move. Okay, anybody else thoughts, comments about the paddle? I thought the paddle was really pretty. The first time I went down and paddled this stretch of the river, I was like really pleasantly surprised that it was as scenic as it was. Yeah. Any other thoughts about the rapids or the paddle? I was surprised at the number of people who didn't have their stuff secured to their boats.
One last comment or other strategy was we attempted the first rapid because we thought, why not? This will be fun. And naturally we flipped. And so then we went and emptied our boat, and we were thinking about portaging it, but it was so heavy. And we were just like, let's just send the boat down. So we got all of our stuff out and carried it, just threw the boat down the rest of the rapids. So they didn't say we needed to be in the boat. Yeah, we just sent the boat down with no one in it and collected it at the bottom.
Dealt with it at the bottom.
Yeah.
It worked. What's that?
That's funny.
I was gonna say, I just think the people, the volunteers, and maybe the normal, crowd at Woka probably were like, "Who are these people?" Because I think they were flipping out about so much of the chaos that was going on. Because normally whitewater people are very, like, okay, we're gonna scout, we're gonna do this very carefully, we're gonna make sure we know what we're doing, and here we had adventure racers, just total chaos.
I bet it was hilarious to watch.
Yeah, I mean, the yard sale in that pool at Siloam Springs was crazy. It was just absolutely crazy. Yeah, the volunteers and spectators were really enjoying the spectacle that you all made. I will tell you that. All right, so let's see. The next thing that I had that I'm curious to know about, and this kind of skips ahead. So just for people following along, after the paddle, if you got all the way down to the end, then you were trekking back through some Woka trails that are biking, hiking trails, thanks to Northwest Arkansas Land Trust for letting us trek through those trails that they keep on their property. And so that got you back to the kayak park. You get on your bikes. You biked into the cute little town of Siloam Springs. They were awesome to work with as well. And you did a photo O. I was really happy to hear people being interviewed. Several people said their favorite part of the race was the photo O. And I was so happy to hear that because I was kind of worried people would feel like it was a little gimmicky. Do you all have any feedback on the photo O? Was it a nice little break in town? What'd you think of that leg? Mary Chandler, I'll call on you first.
No, I thought it's good to break it up. I thought it was interesting. I do think if you were there, we were there right before dark, so I felt like there was a little advantage to that because there's a couple of them that you couldn't see, like the water tower. I don't know how teams who did that in the dark could see the water tower off in the distance, but I guess like for us, it took us, I guess, one or two before we got into it and understood what we were doing. Like how much quicker we could be then because we were a little more efficient after that. But no, I liked it. I thought it was a good little break, something different, new challenge, kind of a group effort. We all had to pay attention.
Yeah, good, cool. Were any of the rest of you there after dark?
And we were.
Yeah, we were, and I was just thinking about that water tower. I remember it being the first one that we went to, and we had trouble finding. Like, we took a little while to figure out what the photo was at that spot. I think the water tower was lit up though, or we finally noticed it.
Yeah. And it kind of was process of elimination from that spot, wasn't it? Like none of the other things fit. Yeah. Britt, you all were there after dark as well?
We were, and it was kind of cool to be in town in the dark because you didn't really need lights unless you were just flashing on those waterways, etc. But also there was live music happening. So
that's what I was gonna say. We had the nightlife.
Yeah. So
I think we were also just happy to have a map at that point. So is that
Oh yeah. So tell us a little bit about that because I didn't get to hear all of the stories. I know at the banquet some of these things were talked about, but so tell us a little bit about what you all did that won you the Peter Yallis Award.
Well, we got. Oh, you want to go?
Oh, I was gonna say being an idiot and then figuring it out. Go ahead, Britt.
When we got off, when we finished that Woka trek, we got to the bikes and realized we don't have all the maps, and because they weren't kind of in order and they're double-sided, so we had left some of the maps in the paddle bag, which then meant the bike to the photo O, after the photo O, and then the bike from the nav relay we didn't have. So we were going to have to be a little, I don't know, strategic in figuring out how we were going to do all those things. So it involved, following people, looking at maps, drawing maps within when I went out on the long section, when we went to the nav relay, and Nikki and Karen were able to recreate a map. So it was a hand-drawn map, and it got us back to our other maps, but it was touch and go, but we made it work. It cost us some time, but what are you going to do? You're gonna go.
Yeah.
You couldn't go back and get your map. The paddle bags were long gone. So, and they think it's a 2-hour penalty to get your own maps again. So it wasn't. We did what we had to do.
Yeah. That's like the second story. Well, and I think the other team maybe won the Spirit Award, who ended up with a bent derailleur and came up with a solution with a, fishing pole and a piece of, rope tied on the end of it, and they just kept going and doing what they had to do. So stories like that to me are what adventure racing is about. So thanks for sharing it, because I just find those sorts of things so inspirational when you encounter your own challenges then in a race, to think back about the time that another team did whatever crazy thing to get themselves to the finish line. So
the other funny part about that too, I'm just going to cut in real quick, is that Nikki even looked at the maps and she was like, this map, we don't need them. So it wasn't even just like this careless, like throw it in the bag and oh my gosh, we forgot it. It was like, we just didn't realize the way they were folded with the double-sided. So it was like, we tried to look through all of our gear because I feel like our team is pretty good about transition areas, talking through what we need to do. Like that's, I think, one of our strong points and knowing what we had. So it was just kind of comical that that's how it ended up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
anytime I leave a map behind in a paddle bag or anything like that, I always like double check. And so Karen heard me go, this is map 1, this is map 2. Cool, we don't need this anymore. And I left it in there. But I did not realize that map 1 and map 2 were sandwiched and there were 2 other maps on the back sides that I couldn't see.
Oh, they were sort of like stuck together.
Because I put them
Oh,
both together in a bag and I just
yeah.
forgot that that was 2 different pieces of paper in there, not one.
Yeah. Well, that was something I actually struggle with on the map printing. For folks who are wondering who didn't do the race, they were not printed so that you have map 1 on one side, map 2 on the other side, then the next sheet, map 3, map 4. And so that feels sort of chaotic when you're trying to review them because they're not in order. And the reason I did that, and I know other race directors do that as well, I'm sure I got the idea from someone else, is that it's maddening when you're trying to plan your route if the next map you need to look at is on the back side of the map you're looking at now. And so for planning your course out, it's better to have the maps not front to back like that so that you can lay the 2 you need side by side. So that's why they were done like that. But yeah, I can totally see how that could have happened, especially if they were a little damp, then they're probably sticking together. So it's even less obvious that it's 2 sheets. Yeah, shoot. Well, it got you another plaque. So there's that.
Sure, look on the bright side. It was kind of
right.
fun problem solving our way through it. Like, but
Yeah.
there was a pretty low moment there where I was like, oh my God, I left 2 maps behind and we're in nationals. Like we are so
Yeah.
screwed right now.
And that's a huge chunk of the course you're talking about. I mean, that's many miles of biking.
We were very fortunate that the 2 maps we were missing were both like road biking that we could figure out. If it was like a trail section, we would have been so screwed. We would have had to take the 2-hour penalty to get maps.
Rachel
All right,
Rachel had a ringside seat to that realization that we were missing maps because they were transitioning at the same time as us.
And
they
I
were like,
felt so bad for you because I actually had just made the same mistake in a race back in July. And we had to follow people because we didn't have the maps so that I had left in a TA bin. So
fortunately in adventure racing, following is not really against the rules. Like in orienteering. In orienteering, it's much more frowned upon to follow. Like it's considered against the rules. Whereas in adventure racing, if you can hang on, man, just keep going. Heather Dash says, so is the lesson never leave maps behind? That's a really good question.
maybe not never,
Yeah.
but with extreme caution.
Yeah, but then how are you sure that you're not going to make a mistake like that? It probably is a good idea to always keep them with you. But yeah, it's just hard because we want to like pare down every little unnecessary thing, don't we? Yeah. I'll tell you this, if you ever do the mission adventure race or a race directed by Brian Holtzhausen with Dino, I learned this lesson the hard way. Don't cut out part of your map that you think you're not going to use, right? Because he has these enormous maps. And so you're like, I don't want all this extra crap. And you cut stuff out. And then you realize later that, oh, you're going to need that map later when you get some surprise part of the course or just the next part of the course. You also even have to be really careful about where you make notes. If you don't know that you've got all of the points that you're ever going to get on the race from the outset, you need to be really careful about making notes on the map because you could end up with your Sharpie writing right over a place where a point's going to show up later. I've learned that lesson the hard way too. Okay, so somebody mentioned the nav relay. I think Britt did, and I want to ask about that. So the nav relay was, you came into this most beautiful TA ever at University of Health and Performance. And they had just basically opened up their whole, dining room, beautiful building to us to set up. And we were serving up pancakes and bacon and beautiful little chuck wagon dinner. And teams would go out separately on this nav relay. And so it was set up as basically an easy, intermediate, and difficult level the points. And so the easier one was 2 points. 2 points, I think, or 3. I can't even remember now. 1 point. Oh, you all just went and got the one on the creek. Yeah, okay. So 1 point, 3 points, and 6 points. That's how they were set up. And the 1 point was also on the 3 point and the 6 point map. The 3 points were also on the 6 point map. So basically the 1 and the 3 were sort of subsets of the entire 6 point map. And so that offered some strategy in terms of what you did, how you assigned that, and what you did while your teammate was out on their portion. So we had a television set up in the TA with the tracker on there. And so it was zoomed into this area where teams were. You could see your teammates dot. They had to take the tracker with them, and you could see your teammates dot while they were out doing their part on the relay. So with that sort of background understanding, Ashley, let's start with you. How did you all divvy? Did you, number one, go for all 3 parts? Because you didn't have to do all 3 parts. You got 1 point per part. You could do 1, 2, 3, or no parts. But it just had to be a different teammate for each part. Ashley, how did you all tackle that?
Yeah, we did all the parts. And I think like many of the teams out there, we had kind of a spectrum of navigational strengths. And so I think there probably only is one edit that I would make to our entire race, like one change of decision. And I think it would have been, we sent Kit out first to get all 6, and then Alyssa went, and then I went. And Kit did 6, Alyssa did 3, and then I did 1. And we didn't quite realize it at the time, but Kit was like pretty unwell. It was probably the start. She ended up with like hyponatremia by the end of the race. So she just like didn't have enough salt. So that basically led to a lot of projectile vomiting for the rest of the race, and her feeling pretty horrible. And Alyssa and I had like talked about Alyssa and Kit switching, and sending Alyssa out because Alyssa can also nav. And I don't know, like, I don't know why, but we just like, we still like, we didn't know like how not well Kit was feeling, I think also, but she went out, and that's like the one thing I wish that we had sent Alyssa, and then I wish I had gone, and I wish Kit had taken that time to rest, because it's like we left that TA like hauling ass, or like after that, and we were biking up that like little road to get out, and we like, just got to the top, and Kit just was like vomiting everywhere, like and so it just was like, that's like one decision that we probably could have changed that would have been helpful, but everyone, regardless of that, everyone crushed their section. It was great. Karen and I were out there running together to our little point. So yeah, it was good. And I think we did a good job communicating, like people filled water, and we like restacked food. We got rid of trash. I prepped a bunch of stuff for Kit to eat that she later vomited. So that was kind of our like whirlwind experience.
Yeah. Okay. So Karen, talk about how you all tackled that, and how cool was it to be able to go out? You don't usually get to navigate. And so how cool was it to be able to go
Scary.
out? And it's nice you had Ashley alongside you, because everyone's in the dark at this point. We should mention that. By now it's nighttime. And so how anxious were you knowing that you were going to have to go out and navigate to a point in the dark?
I felt okay about it. I definitely my problem with navigation is I don't ever do it because people like Britt and Nikki are so good at it. So I just always doubt myself. So like just starting off, I made a little bobble just because I went down the right road and I was like, no, this can't be right. And then like had to regroup myself. But yeah, I was fine doing it. Britt took the longest section, I think, and Nikki took the middle one. I don't know. I personally it was neat getting having to be forced to do something that kind of pushed you outside your comfort zone. And it's neat that I think navigation is such a huge part of adventure racing that I was glad that that was part of it. But personally, I'm strong on foot, and I felt kind of bad that I got to sit out all that time while I knew Nikki and Britt were working harder than I was. I didn't like that feeling. And even though I tried to, same thing, fill up bottles or whatever, it's just I don't know, as it is when you're not the main navigator, you always kind of feel like you're along for the ride a little bit. And I have a hard time sitting in that spot, never feeling like I'm doing quite enough. and having to sit there for that long, and it was cold inside the building. Like I got really chilled. So that was the thing I didn't like about it. But again, it was nice to have to challenge yourself and do something outside your comfort zone. So I appreciated that aspect of it. And I thought the setup was great. And it was kind of neat that you could see your people out there on the screen and see what they were doing and stuff. So that part of it was really cool.
Mary, what'd you think?
I had no problem sitting and waiting.
Mary's like, I don't feel guilty.
No,
You
but
guys-
like Ashley made a really good point, and I think, can you guys hear me okay? I know my computer's kind of wacky.
Yeah.
Like Ashley made a really good point, and that's where strategy of having a team that can nav, if you have all three of you who are capable. Like I think Jesse Spangler's team screwed that up a little bit, that he was so blown as well, and they sent him out on the longest one. And it's like, it's almost better, like, had Justin or Brian and my team, who are both very good navigators, if one of them was really hurting, like to that point, I could have gone out. It would have taken me probably half an hour longer than it would have taken them, but that would have given them a half an hour to recover, right? And then you come back in, and then that's less time that they're crushing themselves to get back and falling further into a hole. So yeah, like when you come into those situations, I mean, we talked about it just mainly between Brian and Justin, like, hey, who feels better between the two of you? Take the harder, take the longer one, whatever. So once we got the information of the lengths of how many were involved and what was going on, we made the quick assessment. Yes, of course, I'm the slowest navigator. I'll take the easy one. But we all felt great at that moment, so it was kind of a no-brainer to just take your send your strongest to the hardest section. But like in Ashley's opinion, I think she was correct. If they could have had that conversation before, like, hey, Kit needs longer to rest. Alyssa's capable of navving. It might take her, maybe they'll lose 10 minutes, but they'll get that 10 minutes back of not having Kit throwing up on the road. So, for us, it was super easy, but like, those are the parts of the things that a situation like this can make or break a team. If you don't communicate and don't admit, hey, I just need a little more time, or I'm not comfortable with this, I need some help or whatever. But otherwise, yeah, I had no problem sitting, eating pancakes for, waiting around and chatting. It was fun to catch up with everybody.
Yeah, it was pretty cold though. I agree with Karen.
I sat in the hallway. I sat out in the hallway.
Yeah,
The bacon was
remember seeing you out
amazing.
there.
I absolutely love the bacon.
Yeah, it was super cold when we first got there, and we realized that the thermostat was just right there on the wall, accessible. So we actually turned it up quite a bit to try to warm it up. I think they sort of had in mind, these are hot racers, it's a hot day, they'll appreciate the cold. They don't realize that once you stop, when you're already wet, you just immediately chill. So yeah, I know it was cold sitting there. Rachel, how did your team tackle the nav relay?
Well, actually, I'll tack on just to add, if somebody's not ready and not physical, my problem was not physical, but I had not been in the maps, and I was the first to go, and so, or we'd picked the strategy that Jared would do the long because he's can nav and he's fast, and then I did the middle because I can nav, and then we gave the 1-pointer to Ben, although Ben can nav too. It just was kind of the way that we were going to do it. But I don't know why exactly we picked for me to go first, but I went first. And unfortunately, and this is probably just an excuse, but because I had not been navving the entire race up to that point, it took me way too long to get into the map. And I was like, oh, shoot. So in retrospect, I think we should have switched Jared first, since he'd been navving, and he could have just quickly picked up, and then give me time to kind of maybe look at the screen and orient myself a little bit better. Because I did lose some time out on my leg. Unfortunately, I felt really dumb, but I figured it out eventually where I was and where I needed to go. But so that's kind of how we did it. And Ben pretty much slept the whole time until he had to do his one, and he did that last. So I think in terms of physically being able to recuperate or do anything, that worked well for us. I wasn't able to sleep. I just did what Mary did and talked the whole time.
Chit chat. Yeah. Well, the intent was, I felt like a good strategy for teams would be to send out your 6-point best navigator first. That gives the other two teammates an opportunity to watch them on the screen and see what they do and see if they have problems anywhere. And also then that navigator can come back and tell the other two exactly what they're looking for. You know, they can give them beta on what to expect and what to look for. So to me, that was the better strategy. We were surprised by the number of people who were sending their 1-pointer out first. I think people get into this rigid mindset of 1, 3, 6, right? Beginner, intermediate, hard, that's the progression. And so a lot of teams we saw sending out their 1-pointer first.
Well,
But
we'd actually thought to send the 3-pointer out first because they could give beta to the 6-pointer who had the longer leg, so that you would actually shorten the amount of time they had to spend trying to figure it out, or they would get get their 3 points a lot quicker. At least that was kind of our thought. But
yeah. Well, I mean, you had a thought process about it though, right? I mean, that's a sound strategic decision too. So just I think it was a good lesson for some of the beginner teams. It was definitely the the top teams that we saw who understood that strategy of you don't send your 1-pointer out first, right? And so that was a really good, I think, learning point for a lot of the teams who were there. Seeing other top teams go out and how they approached that. So for those of you listening, lesson learned there. Okay, so let's see. The next thing I had, so I'm curious about teams, and so I'm going to ask. I think pretty much all of you probably were thinking you would get pretty close to clearing. I wonder, Ashley, let me ask you, because you all on that first leg dropped some already. What were you thinking in terms of the single track for the dog bones course? So the dog bones leg was basically a huge number of miles of single track in Bella Vista, just north of Bentonville. Ashley, were you all thinking, yeah, we want to save time so that we can maximize and try to clear the dog bones course? Or, how are you all on the mountain bike? What was your thought process around that leg?
Yeah, I will just say again, it was just so hot. And I don't know why, but when I look at those dog bones, I'm like, oh my gosh, so easy. We'll get this quick. We'll get that quick. That is certainly not how it felt in the moment. And so we did get all except one, and we ran into rootstock with Brent and Abby, and we were doing it in the opposite way. And so we kind of got some beta from them just on how those 2 points were. And they basically were like, it was horrible and took us so long. And so we were like, oh, that's so interesting. And they were the last 2 that we were going to get. And so we kind of just waited, and we did all of them except that last dog bone. And we went for a little swim in the river, and then we biked ourselves very chaotically but cleanly through the detour through the city and then up the ledger. And that was pretty much that. I will just say, from like a teammate perspective, I probably have never in my life been so proud and so like just in love with a team. Kit was so unwell at this point, so unwell. And Alyssa had already like kind of talked about being super nervous about the technical mountain biking in Bentonville. And so getting to that section of the race and still like working so hard and having Kit and Alyssa navving on that and just like pushing through the crushing heat of that day was like, I think I've never been so happy to be biking towards a building in my life as to when we were done with those dog bone sections. But we had hoped to clear it, but it took longer than we thought it would.
And now, did you say that you all went for a swim in the river before you hit the greenway back?
We did. And at first I was kind of joking, but then it was so hot. I was like, we have to just go in the river really quick. So we like threw our bikes down. We jumped in the river. We were with the rootstock actually at this point, but Kit was so hot. Like, I was like, we need to be in water like immediately. And so we were like, we're going to get in the water and then we'll just bike so fast to the finish. And so we got in for like 90 seconds, and it was like revolutionary. It got us to the finish, and with a couple working brain cells to navigate the city of Bentonville.
Good. That's awesome. So Brett, I imagine you were looking forward to the mountain biking, the single track in Bentonville. What were you thinking? Now you all had to leave a dog bone out there, right? You all missed one of the
No,
heat points
we didn't leave
by
it out
like,
there. We just missed half of it.
yeah, you missed it by like that much, right? By one trail intersection.
So, I mean, the whole thing generally, we hit the trailhead essentially. It was a little after sunrise. So it was like the sun was officially up and the heat was ratcheting, all day. It started out upper 70s at least, and everybody's a little bit less, uh, everyone's a little bit less okay with the heat at that point. So it's just like making it worse and worse. And that map isn't really to scale. So it doesn't look like you're that far from checkpoint to checkpoint. And you are like, and then squiggly lines don't count on the map either. So you're like, oh, this is only 4K. And then like 8K later, you're still not at the checkpoint. Like, oh my gosh, we're never going to get there. And so Nikki was definitely feeling the heat. She can speak to that in a minute. But we were just, slowly ticking off checkpoints. And there's a lot of teams at this point because it's mixing back in. But we're just like entering the trailhead. I'm like, man, this is going to be tight to be able to clear this. And that was only, I don't know, 8 a.m. maybe. So we still had all that time and we were out there until 2:55. But the last dog bone, we went and got the northern point, and then we're just as quickly as we can in our slow motion, we're trying to get to that last point, and there is a parallel trail in attacking that, and one's very easy, and then one was whatever we were on. And so we get to an intersection, and the checkpoint is essentially at an intersection, but there are kind of multiple intersections, and we're not at the right one, and it only shows one on the map. And it's like time. And we had seen Brian Gatens, and they're cheering us, and we had gone through that point. We're like, God, I was like, we have to leave. I was like, out of my mind. I was like, we're gonna be late. We're not gonna make it in town. We don't know how long it takes to get through town. Like, we gotta go. So we went back to the Greenway, and then we meandered through town. We took multiple wrong turns because we got on 3rd Street. There's no way to know what streets they are when you're on the Greenway. So you have to get on the street and then get to multiple intersections to find a sign. You're like, oh, this is the wrong 3rd Street. Back to the Greenway. Get on the next road. Oh, this isn't it either. And we just kept doing this thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we are out of time. How long does it take us to write up the ledger? And yeah, so long story short, we missed one half of the dog bone, which then loses you both the points. So a little bit all for more than one, but yeah.
I'm going to say the same thing that Ashley said in terms of being proud of the team, and this speaks to Britt's leadership abilities. So like we said, Nikki was having a little bit of a harder time from the heat. Britt and I both live in Maryland, and we had a brutal, hot, humid summer. So I do think that helped a little bit in like acclimation to the conditions, because it was kind of similar to what we had all summer here. But Britt at the end was on the Greenway. She is leading a pace line, towing Nikki and carrying Nikki's pack. And she's just still like crushing it. And, it's just like one of those moments of like, wow, like super impressed of her capabilities to lead and do all that at one time.
Yeah, I was in rough shape. I was just hearing Ash describe Kit's experience. I think I started feeling like I was bonking at like 9 a.m. and I just never got out of the hole that entire day. I was in rough shape. Britt carried my pack for hours. And then I also laughed at Ash's description of rolling into town with 2 brain cells left. We were borderline because Britt was navigating and also towing me and carrying my pack. So we got confused by the detour, the Greenway, the fact that there were 2 3rd streets and there were no street signs. So we were freaking out a little bit at the end, and we made it to the finish line with, again, like 4 minutes to spare.
Yeah. It was it was crazy seeing everybody there at the end. And yeah, it definitely, people took longer than we had originally projected, and I think the heat was really the biggest factor in that. So it was it was nerve-wracking for me watching you all, because of course, I want all of you to win. I want all of you to do great, whatever winning means for you that day. So it hurts my heart to see you struggle so much, and yet it's, super inspiring too. Mary, how did the single track go for you all? And I wonder, like, did you how much did you witness the strategy around what order you would go get the dog bones in? Was there a lot of discussion about that, or was it just, zip, 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 we'll do that and we'll get through it, whether that's best or not, we don't know, but it'll be good enough? How did that process go?
Yeah, we kind of, when we looked at it, it seemed like there was seemed pretty straightforward. And I think we made a couple of adjustments once we got out there, because like Britt said, like you couldn't really tell, something looked really close together on the map, but once you got out there, it was a lot of zigzagging, and you didn't really know, where you were necessarily at some points on the trail until you hit, some of the, I know the guys complained about one map showed some of the intersections from the roads that we would cross through the subdivisions, and another map didn't have that. So it was hard for them to kind of help each other out in there. But at that point of the race, that's a tough thing to have 30 miles of single track at the end of an all day of racing. So, the first, I'd say, hour or two was fun. And then after that, we're like, okay, we got to get this done. But, we just, we had no choice. You had to get through it all. And luckily we had time. So we just had to, keep pushing and stick to the original plan. I don't think they changed much, once we finally got going, but it was a little weird because, you double backed and passed the checkpoint you had already gotten. And, so it was kind of confusing. We confused a couple of teams that were like, aren't you looking for the checkpoint? We're like, we already got that like 2 hours ago, but we had to come back and do a different route. So, from my perspective, it felt like we were just kind of ping ponging all over the place, but, I don't know, the guys seemed to think they were pretty happy with their route choice. So I gotta go with that.
So you all had multiple maps that had sort of different information you needed to try to consolidate for that. You had a trail map, you had the topo map. So did Biz and Brian, did they both have map boards on their bikes, and were they each then carrying a different map so they could both sort of have input on that?
Yes, exactly. They basically, between the two of them, they had probably everything they needed, to help kind of figure out where we were at various moments. But it was confusing at times because, Brian would be like, I think we're here. And Biz is like, well, I think we're here because this shows it on my map here. And so it was just kind of, we had to stop and recheck ourselves a lot, but it was worth making the effort and making sure we were always kind of found where we were supposed to be. And, whether we were a little nervous after what happened in the first hour of the day, 24 hours ago, when we, had made such a big error, and they were more concerned about, oh, we got to really stay found on this, or what, I don't know. But we also felt like at that point, it was better to slow down a little bit and just ride smart and get through each checkpoint than it was to just go crazy, because we had the time and we knew no one was that close to us anymore. So it was more about just finishing it cleanly than anything. And
Yeah,
yes,
and
both
now
guys have map boards.
Yeah. And now, Rachel, you have raced on the OUSA mountain bike O team before. Is that right? Do I have that right?
Mountain bike orienteering, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I wonder what sort of setup you've got and what sort of tips you can offer to folks for trying to stay found while you're navigating on the bike, because it's so much harder than when you're on foot, just because of the speed, and especially on single track, you're trying to look at a map and trying to look at a trail. It's just super difficult. I mean, it's a real skill to develop. I wonder how did you get good at that?
Jury's out as to whether I was good. At least at Worlds, we weren't always, we were just trying to beat at least a couple people. But it is very, very, very difficult, at least with the true mountain bike orienteering, because of the details on the maps. Like, it's not the same as what we do here with adventure racing, by any means. But with just reading trails, I mean, it's definitely about just making sure you know which way your directions are, because especially if you get to a trail intersection that has multiple, it's not just an easy four-way or something like that. You got to really know your directions and know your pacing, because that's completely different than foot, obviously. So if you've ridden for, however long, how far have you gone? That's just kind of, like you said, something you learn over time. But honestly, I have not done mountain bike orienteering for Team USA now for quite a few years. I've thought about doing it again. They really haven't gotten the team back together much to do anything, as a team. So it's kind of fallen to the wayside as far as I can tell. But it is definitely just truly mountain bike orienteering is one of the most difficult sports I've ever done. I felt crushed after multiple races. So.
And so for the dog bones leg at nationals, who did the nav for your team?
Jared did pretty much the nav for the whole race, I believe, if I remember correctly. I really didn't nav. I had a map board, but we didn't even use it. It was actually not my current, it wasn't my good map board. So it kind of kept falling down. So I just didn't even use it. Just would ride one-handed to put it back up every once in a while.
Yeah, my map board does that. My good map board does that. How do you keep your map board from flopping down like that? Like, what's your good map board that doesn't flop
my
down?
good map boards, the clips are still both tight on my autopilot. But my old autopilot, one clip has come loose, so it just doesn't. I even use duct tape and it doesn't work. So
yeah, I use zip ties around mine, and I have to change them each time. And sometimes it'll stay tight enough, but sometimes it doesn't. If it's real bumpy gravel,
one of the most annoying things when you're going down a nice downhill mountain bike trail and your map board just goes
flop. I know. The map board flop. It's terrible. What do you use? Do you have a compass that you keep on your map board, or what do you use for your compass when you're naviging on bike?
When I was doing more mountain bike orienteering, I had a clip-on compass that I used on my map board, but I lost several of those because they just rattle off your board at inopportune moments. So I've just gone to keeping my one that I keep, lassoed to my wristband of my watch and take it out when I need it. So it's probably not the most efficient thing, but at least I don't lose it. But
all right. Anybody else thoughts about the single track, about the dog bones course?
Well, I thought you were going to mention who actually had the fastest time.
I won't remember. Was it your team? Who was it?
Yeah, I guess we had to go back and recalculate. And I was like, what?
Okay.
We beat Mary? How is that possible?
So how much did you beat
I guess
them by?
because
Yeah, I don't remember things. And I missed that part of the banquet, so I don't know that I even actually knew
no,
it.
it was like after the fact. It was after the banquet. We didn't get the announcement.
Oh.
Remember, because Brent was like, "How?" They announced rootstock, and they were like, "What?" But yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that part of that's all gone to me.
It does feel like a very long time ago.
Yeah, well, congratulations. So so how much did you beat the next team by? Do you remember?
Oh, it was like 4 minutes. I don't know what it was. It was very, very small amount.
4 minutes out of, so what do you know what you clocked your total mountain bike mileage as for just the dog bones course? Do you have any idea?
Ooh, no, I don't. But it was definitely over 30.
I think we had figured 34 for what we consider sort of an optimal route.
Yeah, because you guys had said something in the pre-race meeting, and then I think we actually came in a little higher than what you had said, if I remember correctly. But all I know is I felt almost every mile of it, as everybody on here can attest to. I've ridden those trails before, and I just had it in my head. I'm like, oh my God, 30 miles of those? Like, that's going to suck. And then as we were out there, I'm like, yes, this sucks.
I was right. This does suck.
Yeah. But the saving grace was that there was water at all the trailheads and crossings. Like, at least it was hot, but at least there was water.
Yeah, lots of opportunities to refill on that course. So how much time did you allot for that dog bones leg? So let's say you were thinking this is going to be 34 miles of single track riding. How much, and your team was planning to clear it. How much time did you allot for that? And like, what did you figure your average pace would be on that?
I know we talked about it definitely taking at least 6 or 7 hours. I'm trying to remember now. It's been, it's been a minute, but for sure we knew it was going to take a long time just because I just kind of had my idea of how long, the few rides I've done out there have been to do X number of miles. And I was like, oh, this is more than that. It's going to be, hilly. It's going to be, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
what I remember us talking about.
Nikki, how much time had you all allotted for that leg?
Britt, do you remember? I know we started before 8 a.m., so over 6 hours.
And were
I
you
don't
all
remember exactly what time
on
we
track
started.
at that point? Were you on your schedule?
I think we felt pretty good about finishing it, but like I said at the beginning, we kind of had our contingencies of which points to drop if we were going to run it short on time. And for us, we thought the natural dog bone to drop if we were running late on time was the last section, which was E. And then, to Britt's story earlier, we thought we did have time for it and we went for it and we just barely didn't find that last point. But yeah, I think when we started the bike section, we thought we were in good shape. And then as we were realizing how slow and tedious it was, we were kind of more and more making a lot of decisions, looking at our timing. Do we have time to get that last dog bone? And ultimately we decided yes. And then when we got to that last E1 and we couldn't find it at the intersection right away, we were like, okay, no, we have to bike to the finish.
Karen, what were you were gonna jump in there?
I think at some point we forgot that the single track portion was 30 miles, and we were thinking that the whole like bike there, the single track, and the bike to the end was 33 miles. So I think at some point in the middle of the night we had this delusion that we were going to finish like hours early, and we kept thinking like that can't be right, that can't be right. And then we were having that debate of like, was it 33 miles of single track or like that was the whole biking, and obviously it was 33 miles of single track, and we were like, oh, that explains it.
That sinking feeling when you
That
say,
would
oh,
yeah.
yeah. Well, it's so easy. You go, we do all this huge mountain bike, and then, I mean, we're practically at the finish, right? And you are, but I mean, it's still another 6 miles of biking down the greenway to get to the ledger. I mean, that's not nothing, right?
I was just looking at our route and it looks like we got to the trail at about 7 hours from the finish, that's what I was thinking it was. I'm trying to see the mileage.
So what do you all average, what do you all figure as your average pace on technical single track like that, Britt? And I'm not talking about when you're doing mountain bike racing. I'm talking about when you're racing with a team and doing mountain biking like this.
Truly, I mean, if you were doing 8 miles an hour at that point, you'd probably be doing quite well, and I'm sure that we weren't. I mean, those trails, if you're just riding them, not having to navigate, you should have no problem doing 8+ at a race pace, but we were not doing that. We were probably, I mean, I don't know, if it was 35 miles, then we're, 5 miles an hour effectively. So, and that's with greenway space involved too. So I don't know if the 6 miles is counted. It's probably not. It's probably added on to that. But yeah. We were probably 6 or so miles an hour in there.
One last question about the mountain biking. Ashley, I'll ask you. So how does your team divvy up responsibility? Was Kit still navigating then at that point if she's feeling so bad, or did Alyssa take over navigation? And do you all divvy up? Do you have someone else keeping track of distance? How do you all divide up that responsibility?
Yeah, I can just give a quick brief answer. So Alyssa and Kit split the maps. So they both had kind of like Mary was saying with her team kind of dividing so that we had all the information. And then Alyssa and I were keeping track of distances on our bike computers, little odometers. And then for some of it, I was carrying Kit's bag just to kind of help with keep her just all the energy going to the brain cells and less to pedaling. So that was kind of how we broke it up. And it worked pretty well. Alyssa's great on trail nav, so that was pretty wonderful. And then I think honestly, because Kit was feeling horrible, this may seem counterintuitive, but for her, navving is great because it keeps her like dialed in and she's not just suffering. So yeah, she was just in front. And I don't know if anyone watched any of the videos of David Roach when he broke the Leadville record, but his wife was running behind him, pacing him for part of that race. And she was also his coach, and it was so cute because she kept being like, okay, don't talk to me, but like, I'm so proud of you and I love you so much. And so for like part of that bike, I would just be behind Kate and be like, I love you so much. I'm so proud of you, but like, don't talk to me. And so between that and the division of tasks, like we got through it, and it, like everyone said, it was hot for everyone.
Nice. I love that. Okay, so I am going to quickly address the questions that Heather posted in the chat. And while I do that, I want each of you to be thinking about, so sort of my last two questions on these debriefs are always, what lessons did you learn or mistakes that you made that you feel like others might learn from in this race? And also, what do you feel like you really nailed in this race that you want to replicate in the future? You don't all need to answer those. You don't all need to answer both of them. We'll just kind of do a quick like show of hands who has something that they want to offer within one of those categories after I address real quickly the questions that Heather asked. So the first question was, what would I do differently as the course designer, race director for nationals this year in hindsight? So in hindsight, clearly the cutoff was, the thing that hurts me the most to see that teams, who really should be full course teams got caught up with that. We knew that like the teams who were going to get snagged by the cutoff were going to be sort of those upper mid pack teams who sort of overestimated how much they would be able to do in that first leg. What surprised us and was upsetting to me was that went further up the field than we expected it to. And I think that was in large part because of the heat slowing teams down, some nav errors, but ultimately that first leg was just too long for the cutoff that we had. So we really, we probably could have pushed the cutoff to 5. It was not just the timing at Woka that was an issue. It was also Siloam Springs, trying to not have people running around Siloam Springs at midnight. So it kind of, and then we also there was a lot of course left after that cutoff, right? And so we really needed to get folks north. You were still really far south when you were down in Siloam Springs. So sort of all of those factors played into that 4 p.m. cutoff. So really in hindsight, rather than extending the cutoff to 5, which we kind of talked about before the race, what I would probably do in hindsight is cut out more of the first trek. Like we could have dropped points 1 and 2, right? And that wouldn't have been quite as scenic. I wouldn't have liked that start as much, but probably shortening that. We actually added a point along the road. I think point 15, I think we added very late because we wanted to try to make that first trek a little more balanced and engaging for teams in the middle and back of the pack. Teams that we knew were going to be dropping points, they were going to be dropping those 5 and, those points sort of up in the middle. And so then it was just going to be a really long gravel run for them. And so we actually added one of those points to just try to make it a little more balanced trek for them. So that was sort of the thinking behind it. In hindsight, we should have dropped another point somewhere else when we added that one, because that would have easily been, the 15-20 minutes that just a handful of teams needed to make the cutoff. So that's what I would do differently for sure in hindsight. I think your next question was that the most people we had seen unwell at nationals? Yeah, I think this is certainly the hottest nationals we've had in my memory, which goes back to 2010. Well, my memory doesn't go back to 2010. I've been involved with nationals since 2010. I can't think of one that's been so hot, and certainly heat stress, I think, is a much bigger factor in team performance than cold, right? We've certainly had nationals that were like bitterly cold and people suffered from the cold, but you can keep going, right? And people would slow down and do things to get warm. But so yeah, I think like we haven't had, more sort of other injuries or illnesses in a nationals than the heat illness that a lot of people had this year. Yeah, heat is really hard to try to deal with when you're adventure racing. And then the last question you asked, I've already forgotten. What was it?
Why save the mountain biking for the very end?
Oh, well, because that's where the finish was. And that's where the fabulous. So Bella Vista was one of our partners. And that's where, you know, we really, in the races that they've had in Northwest Arkansas before and around Bentonville, they really had not highlighted a lot of that single track, which is the reason, you know, Bentonville and Northwest Arkansas is on the map now because of all of that beautiful single track. And so we wanted to really highlight that, and felt like that was kind of the jewel of this race, was that people would get to experience all of those Bella Vista bike trails. Yeah, and because we were starting way far south and finishing in Bentonville, that kind of dictated where that went. Yeah, and you know, it was good too because teams were spread out enough at that point that I hope people weren't just like running into loads and loads of other teams on the trails, right? If we had had that at the start and gone the other direction, you would have had 255 people out there all going in opposite directions, right? Because the way the dog bones were, you could go either way, and so that would have been not so fun. There's the one thing worse than like super technical mountain biking when you're exhausted is having someone on your tail and breathing down your throat while you're technical mountain biking. So that's it. And now I'm gonna go around what is on the screen in order for me. So Karen, I'm gonna ask you if you have any parting thoughts, things that you did well, things that you didn't do well, anything else you want to share about the race?
Mhm.
And
Tell
you
me
can
off
say
the
no, call on Britt or whatever, you know.
Yeah, quickly, I think the thing that we did well, I think as a team, we communicate really well together. My rule of thumb with adventure racing is don't get upset at anyone on your team if you can't do a better job. And I can't navigate nearly as well as Nikki or Britt. So even when the maps got lost, it was just kind of like, we'll figure it out. I think the only time I was upset, I left the e-punch at one of the transition areas. We stopped to put on bug spray and I left it on the ground, and so we lost time going back for that. And I got more upset at myself, you know, for that mistake that I made than at any other point. And so I think the highlight for me of this this race was just that try hard. Like on the paddle, we knew we were literally down to the minute, and it was like, let's just not give up. And I think the same thing when we decided to go for that last dog bone point, it was like, you know, we knew we were close, but it was that same mindset of let's not give up. And so I was really proud of myself, because sometimes I get in that, oh, I can't do it kind of mindset. So I was proud of myself for that. But, you know, as always, it's all about the team, and just being able to be with Britt and Nikki and their leadership is always just amazing. So it was a good experience overall.
Actually, you saying that reminds me, I wanted to ask you to talk for just a minute, because I was really surprised by this. I did not know this until you mentioned it after nationals. We were having a discussion about how you all got together as a team last year, right? So last year nationals, was that the first time all three of you have raced together as a team?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how did that come about? How did the three of you end up racing together at nationals last year?
So I think, so Nikki and I have raced with Rootstock, and Nikki, you can jump in if you want. But I think it was just the dynamics. I think we only had 5 people that could race nationals. And so generally when Abby and Brent get a chance to race together, because they so rarely can, they, you know, I don't even remember, Nikki, who did they race with? Joel.
I think what happened is we had 5 members of Rootstock able to race, and 3 of us were women. So we said, great, we could put together a co-ed team and a women's team. We just need another female racer. And I will give Abby credit for recruiting Britt to the fold. Britt, I think you hadn't raced in a couple of years in adventure racing. Britt was really leaning into the bike racing career, and Abby convinced her to come out of a semi-AR retirement and come and race with Karen and I.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, I mean, you're obviously a powerhouse team. I'm going to do this. So anybody who has some sort of parting comments, do the little raise hand function in there, and then I won't have to like call on every one of you if you're like, no, I'm good. But if nobody does, then I'm going to call on you anyway. Ashley, I'm going to call on you. I know you've got more to talk about.
I think lessons learned. One of the things I wish that we had done is we did not like ratchet up our salt intake. Alyssa had definitely dramatically for her own nutrition, and Kit and I had in our minds done that, but in actuality, like it just wasn't as much as like Kit, for instance, like needed. And so I think like just having more experience in different climates. And I do feel like I went through this with Nikki at MSAR where the heat was just like so brutal. And it just makes it really hard to like manage. And so I think like we learned a lot. And if racing again in those conditions, like we'd definitely be more prepared. But I also think Alyssa and I walked away from that race being like, we're gonna navigate. We're gonna learn to navigate as well, so that if Kit needs to take a break to do something, she can.
Yeah, nice. Anybody else?
I might jump in on the salt thing as well. I think that's actually something, you know, I've been adventure racing for not as long as some folks on this call, but coming up on 9 years, 10 years. And I think this season was the first season where I really came to have more of an appreciation of how much salt I really need to be taking in when it's really hot. And I think I got into a hole in this situation at MSAR racing with Ash when it was 95 degrees and 100% humidity that entire race, and it happened again here in Bentonville, and I didn't even realize it until at some point during the last mountain bike where I was kind of bonking, and Britt was like, "Do you want Element?" And it took, I didn't even, my brain was not working. I was like, "What's Element?" It's very salty. You know, because, and I should have been clued in on this. I was feeling really bad and my eye was like twitching. I had like muscles that were twitching just because I didn't have enough salt. So big just reminder to myself and to anyone when you're racing in hot conditions, like you probably need to take in more salt than you realize. And if you're feeling really bad, maybe try getting some salt in you.
And is Element something that you put in your water, or is that, Britt, why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, it is. And it's no calories. So it's like 1,000 milligram slam of salt in a bottle. I will say that prior to when I was adventure racing, I would almost only drink water. And now I almost always have a hydration mix with carbs and electrolytes in my bottles and my bladder. A lot of people don't like to race stuff in their bladder. I promise it's not going to walk on you unless you just leave it in there forever. But I usually, because it ensures that I take a lot more calories too. But mixes tend to have more sodium and other salts than just salt pills, unless you're taking in a lot of them. So some people it's fine on their stomach, but some people just, the salt pills don't work, and they don't have as much as like just a serving of, like I use Carbo Rocket or something like that. But Element has a ton of salt in it. It's kind of like, it's the highest per serving that you're going to find out there. But yeah, and it's playing with it. Yeah, if you just get out and this is the hottest day you've ever been in, you're gonna find yourself in trouble. I had recently raced or a gravel race, and I had just gone out on purpose and tried to go as hard as I can, and it was very hot, and I crashed and burned. But it kind of feel like it kind of bulletproofed me for the rest of the year as far as the heat was concerned. So it paid off in the end.
Rachel, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, kind of in a different direction, but something Karen said made me think, you know, she said she was mad at herself for making that mistake. And I'd had to actually go back and read my little race report that I'd written for nationals to remember. But actually that is what my takeaway, I think, was, because I made a lot of dumb mistakes that I was really similarly very mad at myself for. Like I'd left a map at a bathroom at the Woka Trails. We had to go back and grab it, you know, before we could keep on, you know, go on that track. And then I messed up on the nav at the O relay, like I already mentioned. And then there was some other mistake I made. But anyway, I was like beating myself up about it because I just hate, you know, being a burden to the team, you know, making a mistake like that. But the guys were really good and we're just like, don't worry about it. Shut up. Like, let's keep going, you know? So in terms of just kind of being kind to others, but kind to yourself too, and just keep moving, you know, that's really kind of the only way forward in a race like that. So.
Yeah, that's a really good lesson. Forgiving yourself for mistakes is a lot harder, I think, than forgiving others. So good deal. All right. Well, listen, we're right at 8:30, couple minutes past. So I think we're going to wind it up, and let me just say a huge thanks to all of you for giving your time. It's been kind of fun for me to listen to your stories and sort of relive the race through all of you. Congratulations to all of you for amazing performances, and all of the all-women teams. Man, wow, just such strong performances. I think the Women of AR community as a whole just keeps getting stronger all the time, and it's very cool to get to watch you all from this side of things, and watch everybody grow and watch teams form and gel and all of that. So I appreciate you all letting me have this place that I have in the community. It's really cool and special. And so thanks to all of you for racing. Thanks to all of you for giving us your time tonight, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks,
Stephanie.
Steph.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Everyone.
everyone.
Thanks,
See you
everyone.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.